Last week I explored some ideas about running a spontaneous TTRPG session, but what if you're not comfortable with that proverbial dive off a cliff and would like some nudges regarding how the story unfolds? For me, that is when I embrace the chaos. Let's roll it. I love GMing games. It is so much fun to play as the world. Creating NPCs makes me part of the shared story, thinking up obstacles fleshes out the world as it's encountered, and following the butterfly effect as the party crashes through the world heedless of consequences is an absolute blast. GMing may be one of the most fun things I've ever done, and I recommend all folks in the hobby try taking a turn behind the screen at some point if you ever get comfortable. On the other hand, GMing can be a lot of work. Maps have to be created, encounters have to be populated, environments got to be described, and GMs who use terrain have to organize assets or create new ones, and then make sure that the needed minis are all available. And even in a world of VTTs, maps just don't need to exist. People expect them to be dressed now, so the immersion is a visual spectacle. And even if I'm committed to running theater of the mind, or I'm planning to run a pre-written adventure, there's still a good deal of prep to compile all the information I need or make sure I'm familiar with the adventure so I'll be free to let it breathe during the session. Now, I enjoy this process, but it takes time, and time is a resource I often lack. And this is why I've been experimenting with the concept of prep for emergent play that's not quite spontaneous play, but it's dang close. I call these chaos sessions. In a chaos session, I come to the table with no plan. I don't know where the session will begin, the adventure's trigger, or how the trigger will be introduced. I also don't know what the problem is, where it's located, or how long it'll take to reach the location, or what environments and obstacles the party will face along the way. Sounds pretty spontaneous, doesn't it? Well, not quite, because what I do is I create tables which will answer all those questions during play. So it's not no prep. I'm not starting with absolutely nothing going on in the background, but it's a fun way for me to do minimal prep. It's also not a new concept because games have been doing this for years, and I'll be talking about more on that later. But I will say this is a process with which I am having a ton of fun. All adventures need a starting point, which means it's the first table I create. So I add as many options as I can think up, which range from silly to serious. The industry-mandated tavern, that is often on this list, but I've also included poetry nights at a local coffee shop, art shows at a gallery, and even one of the characters' homes. Once the starting point is established, I'll let the players spend some time interacting with it. And this is great for one-shots because it presents an opportunity for players to introduce their characters. But it's also great for ongoing campaigns as a way to build up the fiction of what happened in between sessions or summarize the previous session. And once the players have settled in, I have them roll on the next table to reveal what the adventure's trigger happens to be. And these triggers don't have to be huge, earth-shattering events. Local problems can serve as a great fodder for adventures. The problem can be as simple as a fetch quest which the big bad attempts to thwart, or a mysterious delivery mission that leaves the party pondering the best way forward. But if you want to go big, you can include options like an impending disaster or an invasion. Anything that creates drama, which needs to be resolved, can be added to that table. When the trigger has been created and the party has had a chance to interact with it, I'll have the group roll on 2 more tables and note the results. These rolls determine who the big bad is, and I put that in quotes, and what they're hoping to accomplish by triggering the adventure. Now, that idea of a big bad evil guy is a common TTRPG trope, but really the figure at the end of the adventure doesn't necessarily have to be an evil guy. See, in my big bad tables, I will include common tropes like a megalomaniac, wizards, and denizens of the underworld because some things are expected. But I will also add rows which include oblivious folks who have no idea they triggered a disaster by poking around, some jaded civil servants who are just trying to get what they think they're owed, and bored deities who have no idea they're doing actual harm. It's up to the dice to find out who or what is at the end of the journey. Noting both the BBEG's identity, again, not necessarily an evil guy, and their goal at the start of the adventure allows me to weave them into the story as play continues. We know who they are, we're not sure how we're going to get there. The journey begins by determining how many segments the party will need to traverse in order to arrive where the problem can be resolved. I weight this table to make the number of steps work within the framework of the group. So for like a regular home group that's a multi-hour session that occurs week after week, I could set things up to take anywhere from a couple of days to over a week. But for online play, one-shots, or shorter sessions, I've tended to cap this number out at 3. Once I know how many segments the party will need to travel, the players get to make a terrain roll for the day. Boat trips down a river, a road through a forest, and passing through a desert are all options that I've used. I have a lot of fun making these up, though I've yet to roll on the option I believe will be the most fun, the back of a dragon who resents being used as a transportation service. Yeah, I can't wait for that one to come up. Now this table doesn't need to be rolled each day, because if it makes sense to keep the party in the same terrain type, I can leave them there. But if I want to switch things up, or it makes sense that they've come to the end of one particular region in the area, I can just roll again and change things up for the next day. Now for each segment of the journey, the party's going to encounter something along the way, which means I need an obstacle table. Now this is the table a lot of folks who are in TTRPGs are used to. It's the random encounters. Entries on this table can be something as dangerous as a large monster, as unnerving as a sudden weather change, or something lighthearted like a man running a card game scam near where the party is traveling. Obstacles don't have to lead to fights, nor must they require a great deal of effort to overcome. They just need to be something with which the players will need to interact and get past. I've even included the classic 3 goblins in a trench coat in my obstacle table, which has led to some of the most memorable moments in my sessions that I've run with this method. And I will tell you, they have never been murder hoboed. It's really been kind of interesting. I'm also going to create a table with different weather patterns and effects that the party's going to encounter each day, though I can ignore weather that doesn't make sense in a particular biome. 3 days of rain in the desert, for example, it just doesn't really fit. Now this table just adds a bit of color, and it can make things either easier or harder depending on the weather that hits when we roll that die, kind of like real life, but mostly it's just there for ambiance. Now this kind of travel has been a lot of fun for me to run. It creates a whole lot of oddball settings and encounters which are a blast to weave together into a narrative with the group. My favorite part of a chaos adventure is when the day's journey has ended and the group finds itself in another town or just decides to make camp. Each day I open up the floor for the players to tell me what they're doing before the next journey segment begins, which often leads to a whole other level of hijinks that the players get to create on their own. Now the first time I ran this style of game over on Dave Ward's Grimwood Games channel, it was wild, because we ended up with 2 players joining an underground fight club that they invented. Another sold a snake oil blood cleaning solution to that same fight club, and the remaining player wound up at a tea party with a bunch of little girls. We still don't know how that last one happened. He was just there on the street at the end of the evening, on the corner, trying not to smash this little cup as he was sipping. He was a rather large barbarian. Different groups of people, they're going to find their own way to fill this interim space, because sometimes they're going to attempt to advance the quest, sometimes they'll just make camp, and other times, as with the Fight Club session, players will jump into the chaos world building with relish. The point is, this is the part of the adventure the group gets to create with no restrictions from the GM, other than what's already been agreed to at the table, that is. When the party's had their fun, they rest, and step 2 begins all over again. It really is an enjoyable way to do that interim period. What will the party encounter when it arrives at its destination? We're going to let the dice decide. First, I have a player roll to see how many rooms the destination will have, and I can set this to anything I want, though the die type and results will reflect how big the place is likely to be. For one-shots, keeping the destination to 3 or 4 rooms, that's often enough. For an ongoing campaign, setting up a final destination which might have dozens of rooms on multiple levels, that's also an option. We're going to build it as we go. Now there's 2 things about the final destination that I want to bring up in this video. First, the form of the destination can be whatever fits the narrative as it's played out. It just has to fit what you've done up to that point. So if the person at the end of the adventure is a wizard, they might have a tower that they have to go through. A demon posing as a local politician could live in a gaudy house in the center of town, or a wayward scientist might have a camp set up somewhere in a cavern where they're doing their work. Just go nuts with it. It just has to fit what you've done up to that point. Second, the areas don't have to be linear, so it's not A to B to C to D. Feel free to set up multiple exits from any given destination and map them in real time with the players. Because clearing the destination isn't necessary. The players just need to feel like the journey is progressing as they move forward. Now, exploration is not as fun if every area looks the same, so I also create a table that's very similar to the travel table that's got a number of different location descriptions. So there's ancient shrines, pillared halls, old barracks, crypts, natural caves, old kitchens, natural watering holes, and hidden dells all have made appearances in my tables for the final destination. And if adjoining locations don't make sense, I can either ignore a result and re-roll it, or I can just rework them into the fiction somehow. A natural cave off of a barracks that's in an old mansion, well, that might just be an old root cellar. It'll all work out. Now, each area in the final exploration needs to include something with which the party must interact, which leads to a table of crawl encounters. A room could be bisected by a bottomless pit. An ancient trap of varying lethality could be waiting to be triggered. The big bad's minions could have an ambush set up, or perhaps the big bad shows up for a hit-and-run attack just to keep the party off balance. This table could also include some spaces where the party can catch their breath. What shows up? It all depends on what the players roll. Really, really fun. Once all the areas rolled up in Step 4 have been placed, explored or not, one last room can be added which triggers the final encounter. Now, how the party deals with this encounter is up to them. They may choose to negotiate or initiate combat or just invite the big bad out to dinner. It doesn't matter. If the party deals with the big bad, and again, not necessarily the evil guy, just the big bad of the story, if they deal with the big bad successfully, they can head home with a story of another successful adventure. If they fail, there's going to be consequences. Either way, the chaos can continue. As I said in the opening, none of this is new. This is not a new thing. TTRPGs have included tables to help populate crawls and set up adventures since the emergence of the hobby. I've just whittled down the process from other games into a form which works for me, and then I distilled that a little further so that I can use the tables in real time as the table is playing. But here's the cool thing, because random tables in world building are time-honored TTRPG traditions, GMs don't have to start from scratch to create their own tables for chaos play. Castles and Crusades has got an excellent chapter on world building in the Castle Keeper's Guide that's got some helpful prompts. Kevin Crawford's Without Number games, spanning multiple genres, are legendary for their world building. They can be used as inspiration. Old School Essentials has excellent random encounter tables, which recreate the old ones found in BX-D&D. The setting guides, like the ones from Dolmenwood and Land of Eam, they can be mined for ideas because they're full of them. Tales of Argosa has some amazing tools to generate both exploration and random encounters on the fly. My friend Todd from Hex Press has a nice pamphlet called Hexposition, which lays out some awesome tools to create hex crawls, which could be helpful. And full disclosure, I did get a gratis copy of that one. But some of the best world building tables I've seen are the ones found in Shadowdark. This has got tables for adventure prompts, generators for settlements, and hex crawls and dungeon crawls. They are a fantastic resource for anyone looking to create a bit of chaos to explore with a group. The thing is, you probably have most of the resources you already need in order to do this. You just got to mine any game that you own that has any sort of random generator, and you're already on your way. I find that really, really cool. I have had a lot of fun running this style of game. I started by running it for 2 live streams over on Dave Ward's Grimwood Games channel, but I've also run it for an in-person superhero game, the CypherCon online convention, and for the 2 players who were able to come to our last in-person session when everybody else had something come up. Thus far, I've used it only with the Cypher system, but I'd love to try it with Sentinel Comics RPG or Dragonbane at some point because I think it would work rather well with both of those game designs. I've also found that this method is very helpful for emergent world building. Geography is unveiled as the dice reveal it, and the players get to shape the situations that their rolls generate. And I'm taking notes while all this is going on, so if we come back with the same group, events and locations from the prior session, they can be rolled into new tables. I have found freeing up the players to help build the world in this way helps them become more invested in the world, and it's been a lot of fun. That Fight Club for my very first session, for example, they showed up in the tables for the second session that I played with that group, and the people that the snake oil salesman sold that blood remover were not happy, and they were looking for their money back. It was a rather interesting encounter. All right, coming up on the channel, I have finished reading Coriolis the Great Dark, fantastic. I have almost finished reading Redacted. I'm in the adventure section of that, also fantastic. I have got some things from Free League to talk more about Coriolis the Great Dark, and I'm looking forward to doing that. ECCLESICON is coming up in 2 weeks. I'm going to be doing some video on that at some point in the near future. And Random Thoughts are going to return. I've just been too busy to actually sit down and record them. I have some written. I do write them out as I think of them. That's just the randomness so I can remember them later. I am looking forward to bringing all of this to you, including book club, more interviews, and a lot more reviews of some of the coolest games that I have stacked up over on my table over there. This is going to be a lot of fun. And until we see each other again, folks, happy playing, everyone.